Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is purpose as an organizing principle. And when we connect to purpose, it shifts the context for pretty much everything else in life and gives us an opportunity to orient ourselves around this larger picture that calls us into a greater expression of ourselves. So we're going to talk about that this morning. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. It's great to have you here with us this morning, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Before we get started talking about purpose as an organizing principle, let's first take a couple minutes to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together and vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, all that movement and the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, purpose. We've talked a lot about intentions and creating or connecting to a sense of purpose is something that provides a context for pretty much everything else in life. It allows us, as an organizing principle, it allows us to recalibrate, to self-correct, to make the adjustments in our thinking, in our direction, when we just refocus on the purpose. It gives us a richness of context that we can use as a guiding principle, guiding North Star. And so when we talk about purpose, I know for years and years, I had such a sense of really floundering, being lost, being kind of directionless. And that is such a deeply, deeply challenging place to come from. To not have a sense of purpose or mission. And there was deep despair for me around that. And when I stepped into a sense of purpose and a greater clarity, a greater commitment about it, life really transformed for me pretty radically and has continued to do so. So when we look at purpose, purpose is something that it sparks your soul. It calls you into higher expression of who you are, into a space beyond your current capacities. And therefore, it calls us forward into greater expression of our potential. Like we each, I really deeply believe, and it's a working hypothesis, that we each come here with a purpose, and that purpose is deeply tied to our unique expression, how and who we are in our essence. And so we talk a bunch about essence and this notion of purpose. We are each unique in terms of our interests, our skills, our passions, our capacities emotionally, physically, intellectually, spiritually. We're all unique, and it is from the discovery of those unique traits that we have that we get clues to the expression of our purpose. And for instance, some people are just brilliantly talented when it comes to music, or art for that matter, or healing, or communication. And the thing is that, and I think that this is also a really, really important part of looking at this notion of purpose, is that our purpose doesn't necessarily align with an area in which we're brilliantly talented. So just because we're talented in something, or just because we're not brilliantly talented in something, doesn't mean that it isn't part of our purpose. So the thing that really clues us in to our purpose ultimately is what really lights us up, what really makes our heart go pit-a-pat, that or even clunk, like gears fitting in and finally finding their place and their rhythm. That purpose is something that just deeply resonates, and sometimes it doesn't even have to make sense, when we get guidance toward doing something. So purpose doesn't have to be something that you can fulfill necessarily in a lifetime. It may be something that goes beyond time, that it is in the expression of the intention rather than the achievement of a specific result. So I've talked to you all about the eco park as my purpose. And what I've come to realize since then is that my purpose is more around, ultimately around raising global consciousness, and that the eco park was in service to that notion, which was also in service to us waking up to the way that we engage with the world and our surroundings and nature and our own sense of being. And so Rosalind says, what's my purpose can lead one to believe, is there anything that needs fixing? Would one have to ask self, who am I, from that space? Then self-expression works its way outward. So you nailed it, Rosalind. One of the ways that I support people in helping to find their purpose is to ask the question, what breaks your heart? So maybe that's another way of asking what needs fixing. The thing about fixing, and I think that this is a dangerous pitfall that we could easily fall into, is that we look at problems and then try to fix the problem, when in fact we're not looking at the mechanics of an entire system, a living system that has all these different elements. We tend to want to use a reductionist approach to identify a problem and a solution. And the problem with that kind of problem solving is that it's not taking a bigger picture into account in many, many cases. Good morning, Gia, and good afternoon or evening to you as well. So wonderful to have you here with us this morning. And we are talking about purpose as a unifying, and as an organizing principle. So when we are clear about purpose, it guides us. It guides us in making choices. It guides us in prioritizing things. It guides us in a way of being, because it ideally is going to call you to become more of who you are, to become a more refined expression of self, to raise the bar, to call you into expressions of self that feel that they may be beyond your capacity. So the idea is that it's helping us to develop greater capability, greater ableness. And when you connect with your purpose, you know that you have, because it's scary, because it's intimidating, because it's something that is really exciting and terrifying all at the same time, that it lights you up, the prospect of it. And that you're willing, or not, maybe you're afraid. It does take courage to step into this sense of purpose, because really what's happening is that you are giving yourself over to something bigger. And it's often the case that we get very wrapped up in our own little lives and major in minor things, making all kinds of trivial things very important. And putting our focus and our life's energy into superficialities, rather than engaging on a deeper level, a more meaningful level with life. So purpose is about meaning. And I don't think I can even begin to count the number of times we've said here that humans are meaning-making machines. And the meaning that we make can be positive or negative. The meaning that we make can carry us forward or bury us. And this notion of purpose and the meaning that we ascribe to it, while also recognizing that perhaps, that meaning is manufactured on some level. But by committing ourselves to a deeper meaning, a deeper purpose, we create a very, very different experience of life itself. When we feel that we're going, and the feel is an operative word here, that purpose is a sense of connection, a sense of, I keep coming back to context. When we have a context within which we can live our lives, that provides us with a richness of experience. And it's not to say that that purpose is immutable. You know, it may be that we believe that this thing is our purpose, and then we shift to recognize that it's something else, and that's okay. The thing is that purpose provides us with the fuel to move forward. And typically, if you're really finding a sense of purpose, it creates a context that is large enough that we can have a multitude of ways in which to express it. So Gia says, I think purpose directs our thoughts and actions, and results in a clarity of mind, basically. Exactly. So thank you, Gia, because really what's happening when we have a sense of purpose is it allows us to sort out a whole bunch of other noise. And so much of our culture, so much of our lives is just filled with noise pollution, you know, whether it be media sorts of things, movies, social media, TV, news, you know, there's so much pollution that supports us in the rootlessness that we may experience. And to be having a purpose gives you a place to keep coming back to come and recenter yourself, to reorient yourself to that space, and then look for ways that are in alignment with your unique expression to fulfill that, to move toward it, to live into it, to grow into it. And so having a purpose, while it may not necessarily give clarity to every action that we might take, maybe it doesn't give us a specific course of action, but it allows us to sort through potential courses of action to see if that is in alignment with our purpose, and then also with our unique expression. And so that maybe many people have a sense of purpose to raise global consciousness, and maybe one of those people might be doing that by meditating in a cave, and another person might be doing that by creating an educational system, or another person might be doing it through music or art or performance of some sort. I mean, the thing is that there's a multitude of ways to express purpose that are then a unique expression of our unique being, and that is in alignment with our being. So oftentimes people have a sense of purpose, and then they martyr themselves, they suffer, and to fulfill that purpose. And my take on that, and again, my hypothesis is that they're not in alignment if they're suffering. Now, maybe some people believe it's their purpose to suffer, and it's not mine to take it away from them. But I tend to believe that if we're in alignment with our purpose, we're not suffering. We're feeling invigorated. We're feeling alive. We're engaged. And that's not to say that there aren't challenges and difficulties to encounter and overcome in the course of that expression, but that's invigorating also. So Rawson says, when seeking purpose, does one need to realize boundaries, either leaving self open to the demands and whims of others, or perhaps needing to change them, like not associating self with groups that create drama. So I think what you're talking about, Rosalind, is our own unique expression. Some people really thrive on drama. I am not one of those people. And so I am discerning about where I put my energy and with whom. And I think that what you're talking about is clarity, maybe. I think it might go to the same kind of question that we were talking about a minute ago, where it's not necessary. I don't believe it's necessary. Again, my belief, and I could be wrong. I don't believe it's necessary to suffer in fulfillment of your purpose. Now, there's certainly religious icons that pose a very different vantage point on that question. But I tend to believe that there's a certain joy and fulfillment in the expression of our purpose. A certain, and it may not be joy. Maybe it's just like a deep sense of alignment and clarity. And it doesn't mean we don't have doubts from time to time, or a crisis of not conscience, but a crisis of clarity and direction. Jesus says, you're right, having purpose may not help us having clarity in our actions, but yes, it has helped me to know myself better each day, to know my strengths and weaknesses, my do's and don'ts, my challenges around it, and like, who am I in this game? Kind of a clarity, like, who am I in this game? Kind of clarity. Yes, I think so. I think so. It's you said so much there, Gia. I think that while it doesn't necessarily give us clarity about specifics of our actions, it gives us a measure against which we can perceive things, or we can evaluate things. Like you said, it helps you to know your strengths and weaknesses, your do's and don'ts, your challenges. And when we get to this notion of identity, you said, like, who I am in this game. I'm glad you gave the context of who I am in this game rather than who I am, because I believe that who we are is something that's quite fluid. Again, my belief, my perspective, but I don't think that we are fixed entities in who we are or who we can become. And at the same time, I do believe that we do have an essence that is yearning for its expression, and that expression is malleable and mutable and expansive. And Gia says, I totally agree with you. Some people beat themselves up and suffer for the sake of fulfilling their purpose. I have seen this, Gia, so many times in healer people, particularly, where people feel the obligation to single-handedly save the world. And the truth is that, it's funny because I have a tagline for sustainability now: together we can save the world. And on some level, the world certainly doesn't need saving. And on another level, it's a call to our engagement. Now, do we need to suffer to make a difference? I don't tend to believe so. Doesn't mean we don't suffer, but is that a requirement? I don't know that it is. Perhaps, moving through the suffering deepens our awareness, deepens our learning, so that perhaps we can transcend the suffering. So maybe there's a purpose there in in experiencing those challenges. But I tend to believe that in our highest expression of ourselves, that there is a reward to that is way beyond suffering. And yeah, I believe we've been conditioned to learn to value suffering and to revere suffering. And I think that attitude towards suffering has allowed us to be complacent about so many circumstances that are completely unacceptable, that are calling for change and transformation. So Rosalind says, having a purpose, priorities begin to form. Yes, exactly. Priorities begin to form and non-important things fall away. Exactly. What does one do in the gap to conceive or derive what their purpose is? So I'm just going to remind you again, if you haven't had an opportunity, anybody listening, to download, I made a little ebook, and it's sort of a beginning to finding purpose. Rosalind says, maybe making a shift to emotions one wants to feel more of. I think that that's an important part of finding our self-expression. But if you go to my website, yourcoreconnection.com, there's a tab that says Blueprint, and there's a little ebook with lots of pictures, much more pictures than text, I think, it's called Your Inner Success Blueprint, 5 Keys to Becoming, 5 Keys to Becoming Who You Were Born to Be, I think, or 5 Keys to Discovering What You Were Born to Do. It's so funny, I'm not remembering the title, but anyway, it is about finding purpose. And we have a lot of clues. We have a lot of clues, particularly from our childhood, the things that we really wanted, we dreamt of being or doing when we were children. So maybe I dreamt of being a teacher a lot. And isn't that interesting? I spent 18 years with an Adobe software training center teaching people. And now I do coaching, and I do these engagements, and I'm going to be putting on more courses. And so, that was always something that was part of who I was, and playing show and tell, which is so much what I do. It's like, let's look at this issue. Let's talk about it. Let's discover what this is about. Tremendous amounts of curiosity, always. And always curious about what the nature of reality is. So these are clues that have been there. These things, these clues to our purpose and our essence are there in plain sight for us to see, frankly, so obvious that we often miss them. And so I invite you to check out those things that have been constants in your life. What is the common thread throughout your life that speaks to who you are in your core? And as we discover those things, we also find the things that we love doing, the things that really light us up, that energize us. You want to be looking at that also, because that's also a profound clue. What breaks your heart is also a super profound clue. Because when you take all these other pieces and you look at that piece, these things can all come together in a profound way that give you a deeper sense of purpose and meaning. So Rosalind says it requires a lot of effort to not be yourself. Oh my gosh, it does, Rosalind. And yet that's what we're all taught to do, is to not be ourselves, to deny our weirdness, to deny the thing that we've often been criticized for. Those are often the things that are our greatest strengths and talents and our essence. They're the thing that make us stand out as different from other people. They are the things that make us unique. So this is about looking deeply at where the criticisms have come in and to find the gem in those criticisms. I was always told that I was either too intense or crazy. Within minutes of meeting me, people would say that for a good portion of my life until I learned how to be more socially skilled, I guess, a little bit. I used to just say what was on my mind. Now I get paid to do that, which is pretty awesome, right? So Gia says, I think suffering is inevitable as a human. All our suffering gets rewarded when we understand that. Suffering is not the way to get to your goal, but it's the process to transform or get to your higher consciousness. But we believe that suffering is the only way, and some suffer all their lives and call it karma. And this is how, and this is how it should be. Yeah. So yeah, people do find. I think that often. Oh my, so many thoughts. So I had the privilege of attending a week-long event with the Dalai Lama some years ago, and my biggest takeaway from that really remarkable experience was that all suffering is a result of misconceptualization. So pain and suffering are not the same thing. We can experience pain without suffering. Suffering is when we create certain meaning around that pain that embellishes it in such a way that it causes the suffering that we experience. And so that was a really powerful revelation for me. So pain is going to happen. Suffering is optional. And it doesn't mean not suffering is necessarily easy. And it may not be obvious how to not suffer. And I agree with you 100%, Gia, that it is perhaps in that suffering that we find our paths to growth and transformation. So I think that's it for today, folks. Purpose. Purpose is really such an essential thing to quality of life. You know, oftentimes people get to the point where they have everything they could have wanted. They have the picture perfect life on paper and they're miserable. And the reason they're miserable is because they don't have purpose, because they realize that all this stuff is meaningless ultimately, that it's not fulfilling the calling of their soul. And when we step into purpose, it means, it can mean loss of certain friends, relationships. It means change. It means stepping into another context for living. And it is the greatest reward in life, is that deep sense of purpose and presence. At least that's what it seems so to me at this time. So with that, I so thank you for your engagement and your candor and your thoughtfulness and your intensity. So this is such a privilege for me to have these conversations with you. So I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network, EWN, One with the Earth, Enlightened World Living. And until next time. So much love to you.